Hello everybody. This will be the first of our pre-lecture videos. So in these videos, I'm going to try to introduce new topics to you for you to watch and review prior to our live sessions. So the point of these is to kind of get the basics out of the way so you can kind of prime your brain for doing a little bit more detailed and deep work when we're in class together. So today, the lecture I want to give, or this pre-lecture video, is about MATLAB. I'm going to introduce you to MATLAB and go through a few topics. In particular, the topics that I want to go through are just basically very simple orientation to MATLAB, like what exactly does it look like when you run the program if you haven't seen it before. I'm going to start with very simple tasks of like creating lists and matrices. Those are the objects that MATLAB prefers to work with. It likes to work with matrices, so we'll show you how to create those and how to kind of access certain elements of those lists or matrices. Finally, I'm going to talk about how to create what's called a script and publish a script, publishing a script. So that's going to be how you turn in your code in lab. So let's get started with that. When I pull up MATLAB, and if I run it for the first time, I end up with something that looks like this. Okay, so this is, let's just take a little tour. You got your toolbars up here. There's two windows here. One is called the command window, and the other is a workspace here. So the command window is just like a calculator, it's more than a calculator. You can type, more fancy things in here. But to start, just to get oriented, you can see that it does in fact work like a calculator. If I type in 2 plus 2 and press enter, it'll put out 4, right? So luckily it's working. And you can do all sorts of operations in here. Like I could take the square root of pi. So when you want to use this pi, 3.1415, you can just type in pi, and sqrt is the square root of pi. So if I type that, I get this number. That's the square root of pi. It knows all kinds of functions, like, maybe you want to take the sine of pi. I get a very small number, very close to 0. Notice that by default, these trig functions are in radians. And so the sine of pi radians is 0, and the number that I've got there is something times 10 to the minus 16, which is basically 0. If I want to do degrees, I need to do sine d of something like, so maybe sine d of 90. That's the sine of 90 degrees. That'll be 1, right? So just remember, it's always in radians by default. If you want to use degrees, you can use sine d, or just convert your degree into radians. Maybe that's easier. So MATLAB is a calculator, but it's much more than a calculator. I was kind of amused that I've had students, during our computational lab, pull out a calculator in order to do something. You don't need to do that, right? You have MATLAB, it's a calculator, so you can do any calculations you need here. You'll notice when I type in these things, on the right in this workspace, there's a little thing that popped up with ANS, so answer, that's the previous input. So if I double click on that, it'll pull up, you can kind of see it there, the value is 1. And if I double click on it, it'll bring up this kind of spreadsheet looking thing, which also shows that the value stored in there is 1. Okay, so this thing is very nice, this workspace, for keeping track of different variables. So for example, I can store a value in a variable, like let's say x equals 2, and push enter. What this means is I've stored the value 2 into the variable x. So I like to think about the single equal sign is better. It would be better if it was like a left pointing arrow. It means that the value 2 is being stored into the variable x. And you can see once I did this, in my workspace, I now see the variable x there, and its value is 2. Okay, and I can recall it anytime. If I do like x plus 2, it gives me 4, because that's 2 plus 2. X times 2, that's also 4. So that's this workspace over here is very nice for keeping track of your variables. And if you ever want to inspect a variable, you can just double click on it. It'll pull it up and tell you exactly what's in there. Okay, so this is the kind of overview of the sort of things, just like how to get oriented with MATLAB, how to keep track of variables and that sort of thing. One kind of nice thing is that if you want to retype the previous input again, you have some really complicated expression, you want to reevaluate it. If you push the up arrow, it'll take you, you can go back through the things you've already typed in. So like, I could retype sine of pi just by selecting that. Okay. So that's kind of nice for doing something fast in the command window. So far, I've kind of given you a basic tour of MATLAB and the kind of features of the calculator, the command window, and the variable workspace. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction here. MATLAB stands for Matrix Laboratory. So it works with matrices. MATLAB really likes to work with vectors, lists, matrices, things like that. So the natural objects that it likes to work with are matrices. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction on how to create a matrix in MATLAB and how to work with it. So we're kind of in this area now, creating lists and matrices and accessing elements. All right, so first thing is let's start by talking about list, which is like a one-dimensional matrix. So a list, or I might sometimes call it array. It's like a list of numbers. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's call X list. It goes in square brackets like this. I'll just say like 1, 5, 9, 10, something like that. That's a list of 4 numbers. And I'm putting it in the square brackets. That's how it knows it's a list. And then I will put a semicolon. The semicolon at the end tells it to basically don't put the output after I type this in. So what does this mean? It means I'm taking this list of 4 numbers and I'm storing them in this value. This is the variable name here. Okay. X list, name of variable. Okay. So that is the whole name, X sub list. I'm going to ask you to try to do something important, which is that at the beginning of when you're starting out with MATLAB, I see a lot of mistakes are made because students forget what kind of object a variable is. They forget it's a list. They forget it's a matrix. So what I'm going to ask you to do when you start out is when you start naming variables, put like underscore list for a variable that's a list and underscore matrix for a variable that's a matrix. That will remind you that it's a matrix and it will stop you from making those mistakes. Okay, so this is not just a number, it's a list. Okay. And you'll see I put in spaces in between the numbers and it will create that list of 4 numbers. So this will be what I'm going to call a row vector. It's a row vector or a list. In math notation, it would be like this, 1, 5, 9, 10, right? I could also do something like Y list. Let me do a different one here, like 1, and then put semicolons in between. Let's just put some numbers, 3, 6, 8. Okay. This is going to be a column vector. And in math notation, it would be like this, 1, 3, 6, 8. Okay. So those semicolons mean go to the next row. Okay. If I don't put a semicolon, like here, I put a space there, that means go to the next column. All right. Let's try that out in MATLAB just to illustrate how it works. So here we go. Here's our MATLAB command window. By the way, just a little nice trick is that if you want to start with a clean window, you just type CLC. So that's like clear the command window, got rid of everything. Okay, so let me try and do that. Let me type in now xlist equals square bracket, and then I'm going to put 4 entries. I don't know if they're exactly matching the ones I had before, but something like this. I will not put a semicolon at the end, and you'll see what happens. So when I push enter, I get the output. Basically, it tells me what is X list. It's that list of 4 numbers, 1, 3, 6, 9. And this is like a row vector. You can see if you open up the value, you see they are coming in a row there, right? 1, 3, 6, 9, just like that. Now let's do it again with the column vector. I'm going to type like Y list, let's say. I'll do 1 semicolon. I'm just putting in random numbers here, 12, something like this. Okay. Now I'll put a semicolon at the end. When you put the semicolon at the end, what's going to happen is that it will execute that command, it will run it, but it won't print the output. Okay, so the semicolon suppresses the output. It tells it, do it, but don't tell me what you got. Okay, just save some space. If I want to look at Y list, I can go over here and just open it up, and you can see there it is in a column. So it's a column vector. The semicolons there tell you to move to the next row. And so it just looks like that. I can also get it by typing it in this here. So Y list 1, 5, 8, 12, just like that. So there you got a row vector and a column vector. You know how to, the row vector, you put a space in between the numbers. The column vector, you put a semicolon in between the numbers. What if I want to make a matrix, like a 3 by 3 matrix? You can probably guess how to do it. You're going to combine the spaces and the semicolons. So let's try it out. I would do something like, let's call it M matrix. And I'm going to remind myself that it's a matrix by adding the subscript matrix. Okay, so this is just a name that I made up. M matrix is the name of this variable. So here it comes. 1 space 2 space 3. So that's the first row, right? I put spaces in between. Now I want to go to the next row, I put a semicolon. We'll do like 4, 5, 6, semicolon, 7, 8, 9. Just like that. Okay, and I won't put the semicolon, so I'll show you what it gets. So there it is, a 3 by 3 matrix. 1, 2, 3 is the first row. 4, 5, 6 is the second row, because I put the semicolon to tell it to go to the next row. And then 7, 8, 9, third row. So there you have a way of creating a matrices and row vectors and column vectors. Here you can open up this variable and you see the numbers are there. Suppose you've got these lists and you want to kind of look at one element of the list. Like maybe I want this number 9. I want to access and I want the computer to tell me, you know, what's the variable you have in the third position of this list. Or same thing for the Y list. Like maybe I want to know what's the last element here. So the way you can do that is you're sort of accessing the element of the list. And it's very easy. You just type the variable name, and then in parentheses, you tell it which entry you want. So for example, X list of 2 means give me the second element of X list. Same thing, right? Y list of 4 would be, you know, give me the fourth element of Y list. What if you have a matrix like M, let's call it matrix. Here's the general rule now. I, J is give me the entry in the ith row and the jth column. Okay, so I'm telling it what is the row number and what is the column number. It's the row, and this is the column. And that will give me that element. Let's do a few examples in MATLAB. So again, if I type X list, that's just telling me the whole list, right? But if I want maybe the third element, I would type X list 3. That's the third element of X list. And you can see I get 6, which is that third element there. What's X list 1, it's 1, that's the first element, right? What's xlist 0? You get an error, right? It means the 0th element doesn't make any sense. What if I did something like xlist of 10? That'd be the 10th element. But there isn't 10 elements, so you get an error, okay? Let's look at our matrix here. Maybe I want this number 6 here. So that's the second row, third column. So M matrix 2, 3, second row, third column. I get 6, right? Second row, third column. So now you know how to create matrices, and you know how to access individual elements of a matrix. Okay. So we've done this part, and maybe the next thing I'm going to talk about is creating and running a script. So let me clear everything out here. By the way, the command clear will clear all the variables. So now I'm starting fresh. Okay. So maybe I've got a set of things I want to do. Like maybe I want to create a matrix and then I want to multiply it by 2. So maybe I could just type them in here, right? I could just say like M matrix is equal to 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 8, something like this. And then I could say M matrix times 2. Okay, so there's the answer. But what generally you're going to be doing is not using the command window. You're going to be creating a script. So a script is basically a list of commands which the system will run for you in succession. So I'm going to type here new script. Okay, it's going to pull up a new looking window. So now I've got this thing here. It's like a new window called editor. Okay. I've still got my command window down here, so I can still use this. I can still type 2 + 2 is equal to 4 and things like that. But this is like a program. So think of a script as a list of commands which you want the program, the computer to do for you, run them all in succession. So you can think about a script as like a robot, which is just going like running the first command, running the second, running the third, fourth, fifth, so on. Okay, so here's, let's try to do this all in the script, okay? First step, very most important step. Every script should start this way. It starts with the command clear, that's clearing everything out. And then I type close all. This is going to close any figure windows, anything like this. And then I type CLC, which clears out the command window. So all of my scripts always start with these 3 commands. Okay, now I'll type in, let's just do that same thing. M matrix equals, I'll create some matrix, 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 14, something like this. Generally, I'll put semicolons at the end of my lines. And then maybe I want to do M matrix equal, let's say I want just the element in the third row, the first column. Sorry, there's only 2 rows there. So second row, first column, that should be 4, right? So you see nothing's happening. I'm not executing these. But then when I click the command run, it will run all of these commands at once. Not at once, but in succession. It'll first run clear, then it'll do close all, then it'll do CLC, then it'll do this, and then it'll do this. So you're telling it, the script is giving it a list of commands which you want it to run in succession. So first thing you're going to do, I'll click run. And first thing it'll do is it'll want you to save it. So I will save it. Let's just say my first script. So I'll save that. And now I'll click run. And you can see the output is in the command window here. So it says answer equals 4. That is the answer that I got from this whole thing. It created the matrix, which you can see is there. And it's telling me what element is in the second row and the first column. And the answer is 4. Okay. I could make it even a little more explicit. I could do something like DISP is how you print something. I could say the element in the second row, first column, is, and let's try running it again. Now I get this in the output, right? Element in the second row, first column is 4, okay? So this is generally how you're going to be working. You're going to create scripts and then run them, and then you're going to turn your script in at the end of lab, say. Okay. Let me show you how I'd like you to turn them in. It's with this nice publish feature here. So if I click the word publish, it brings up a bunch of options here. And what you want to pay attention to is this thing here. So first thing, I'm going to click this down arrow and click Edit Publishing Options. And yours should look kind of like this. I would like it to be a PDF. And this is going to tell you where you're going to put the output. So I'm going to put it, I'll just say, I'm not quite sure where to put it. Maybe I'll just, because I'm lazy, I'll just put it in the desktop. Okay. And then most of this stuff I think you can probably leave the same, and I'll click Publish. Okay. So when I click Publish, what will happen is it will create a PDF showing the script and showing the output. There we go. And this is the PDF that you get. So you can see here's my script up at the top, so I can see the code. And then at the bottom, it'll show you what the output of the code is. So this is the kind of thing that you want to submit. You want to submit a published PDF of what your script does. There's one more really important thing that I want to go through, which is adding comments. So if you want to type something in English to explain to who's ever reading your code, or more likely to yourself in the future when you try to understand what you did, you put a % sign. So I can say put a %, and then I'll just type like, what is the code doing, just to remind me what it's doing. And also your TA will be looking at these comments to make sure you have clearly documented what your code is doing. So I'll say like, define the matrix M matrix. And then maybe here I'll say print out the element in the second row, first column of the matrix. Okay, so that way it's kind of clear what the code is doing. So including those comments is really helpful, makes your code more readable. And I can click Publish again, and I'll have a new PDF file. There it is. That's much better. All right. So in this pre-lecture video, I hope now you know your way around MATLAB. You know what the command window does. You know how to use it as a calculator. You know how to create lists and matrices, and you know how to access elements of those lists and matrices. You also know how to create a script and how to run the script and publish the script. Okay, so those are the things that are going to be helpful for us going forward. We'll pick it up here in class. So thanks again for your attention, and I hope you found this useful.